Start.
Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So God, right, that's very echoey and loud. We're going to start slightly early, which will give us hopefully more time for discussion at the end. Well, everybody did welcome. I'll do welcome as well. It's great to see you all. And although I can't see them online, we have another 100 people apparently online, which is good. Maybe a bit challenging for dealing with questions and discussions, but we'll see how we get on. So the opening, this session glories in the title, Does Organic Matter? Do small-scale producers need organic? But actually we've altered that and said, do small-scale producers need organic certification? And what are the alternatives? That's fundamental questions. And we're going to deal with it in three sections. So we're going to kick off really with the three of us saying why we think organic matters. And then we'll go on to why we think organic certification matters and what do we mean by certification. And I'm joined by Stephen Jacobs from Organic Farmers and Growers. And Tamara, I've been practicing your name all morning and I haven't got it. Skillful? Go on.
Skillful.
Okay, I wasn't that bad. So Tamara, who's going to talk about not just from her experience with Tolhurst Organics, but also with her experience of organic growing and president of an organic food association in Moldova. So to kick off, does organic matter? And sorry, have I? Brilliant. Okay, does organic matter? Do small-scale producers need organic certification? What are the alternatives? And my view is yes, organic does matter, and it desperately matters, and it matters more than ever it did, because of the state that our planet's in, the state that our overall health is in, the state of our society, our organizations. The organic approach matters more than ever. The thing is, for me, I keep reading about organic as a subset of agroecology. And we all talk about agroecology, one example of which is organic, and then another example of which is regenerative, whatever that means. But organic isn't a subset of agroecology. Organic is the one approach to farming and food, to food production and the quality of food that's built on a concept of health. That concept of health, encapsulated in the phrase, the health of soil, plant, animal, and man, is one and indivisible, not interconnected, not interrelated, one and indivisible, one whole, with boundaries, with an intrinsic, innate characteristic. One and indivisible. In other words, the health of the soil is inextricably tied with the health of us as people and the health of our society. That concept is attached to the concept of whole. The term holistic is almost as badly used and as degenerated as the term sustainable. Actually, it's even worse. You have holistic hairdressers, for God's sake. The term holistic is really key. The concept, the holistic concept of organic is about boundaries and limitation and respecting the integrity of the whole organism. Now, if you talk about agroecology and you come from a particular definition, the Soil Association have just put out a very interesting discussion document on what they describe as agroecotech. Their starting point is the FAO definition of agroecology. With impeccable logic and coherence, they arrive at the point that genome editing has a place in agroecology. You can do that because you start with a vague definition, a vague description of agroecology. If you start from the integrity of the whole organism, you cannot get to that point because any technology that invades the organism is automatically out. So this is why there's this kind of critical difference. And that concept is the only concept of food and farming that is a truly holistic concept that actually speaks to what life is about, how we as living beings, living organisms relate to other living organisms. If we get that and we build a society around that, it's a truly revolutionary concept, not just in agriculture, but right the way through society. So from principles into practice, even though the practice is often imperfectly implemented. This concept, why organic matters, it's the framework and a way of living on a planet of finite and diminishing resources in a really holistically healthy way. So that's why organic matters. Why does organic matters to you, Stephen?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, I'm about to tell you.
Does it matter to you? Actually?
It matters to me hugely. Yeah.
And why?
Okay, and you're going to cover that in the certification?
Yeah, well, I can just briefly say, one of the things that I think is really important is, like Ben was saying earlier, this has been going on for ages. And communities and networks and businesses have been building under the oat word. And I know there's a lot of problems and challenges in that, in the certification, all the rest of it, and we can discuss that. But let's not forget, it's been building. I think it's 72 million hectares worldwide at the moment. The organic market is worth about the same as the entertainment industry. Somebody pointed out to me recently, $100 billion. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. But it is niche, but it's a big niche. And it needs, I think, it needs to be recognized for its value.
Okay. Why does organic matter to you? As opposed to certification for a minute, why does organic matter?
It matters to me and to my colleagues and to the growers that I help, because to us it's like a benchmarking set of, well, I won't use the word standards just yet, but it's a benchmark to which you can relate, whether you are certified or not. But it's something you can look at and say, right, I am not quite there, or I am there, or I am above that benchmark, or I don't like that benchmark, whatever. But it's something that anybody that has organic in their heart, has a planet and the future, a sustainable future, they can relate to organic and say, right, this is where I want to be, this is where I can be, or I want to be above that, or no, I don't want to be there for whatever reason. So to me, it's something we can relate to. We can measure our actions, how good we are we better than organic or not? And without such a set of without such a benchmark, I think we would be all over the place. And we would be talking about a lot of things, good things, but we wouldn't have a common definition of them and a common place to discuss. So yes, to me, it's something, it's like a household where you want to be and have it. Okay, so the three of us, and I think most of, if not all of the long-term members of the Organic Association, it first of all was called and now the Organic Alliance. For us, it's essential to how we go about things, how we go about our lives. I would, as things stand at the moment, because of the confusion around terminology, I'd make it a rule that every time any organic grower or farmer talks about their system, they actually had to start by saying organic matters, not just regenerative or an agronomic technique, but all of the other things that go with it, the concept, the values, the value chains, the philosophy,
All of that can't be separated from agronomic techniques. And then we come to the difficult area, and it is very difficult, of whether organic certification matters and whether organic certification matters particularly for small-scale growers. And this has been a dilemma and a problem. Going right back to the beginning, I was involved for my sins and to some regret, spent far too many years of my life involved with standard setting, helping establish certification in this country and abroad and so on. There was never any question for those of us, the first members of the Organic Growers Association and British Organic Farmers, that certification was critical. Not just as a brand, but as a declaration of how we saw things. But we always recognized that the more things moved on, the standards and the certification process got more complicated, got more expensive. And there are many growers, small-scale growers, who said, actually, it's too expensive. It doesn't justify it. We don't want to spend the whole day being inspected. The business doesn't justify it. And anyway, as we sell directly to people through a box scheme or people coming to buy, we don't need certification. Actually, in the early days, we recognized that. There was this idea that if you were direct selling, you really don't need certification, so long as you made a commitment to proper education, not just an open day or half a day every now and again, but proper education of the customers and the people you were selling, the communities you were selling to, so that actually they could understand the decisions that were being made. So we never doubted the issue of certification, but I do hear, you know, OGA AGM a couple of years ago, someone saying, I don't need certification, I don't want to do it, it's too costly and so on. And these are real issues. But Stephen is a member of a certification organization. So have you got anything to say about the need for certification?
Now?
Now.
I've got oodles to say about it.
Okay, but you only have a little time.
Well, just...
Do you want your slides now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to, Tony, just hit the first one? So, yeah, sorry. It's really bright here. I should have brought some suntan cream, I think. So, Organic Farmers and Growers is the company that I work for. OF&G is an organic certifier. We were the first to be approved by the British government. Our history is long. One of our previous directors, sadly no longer with us, Angela Bates, was Vice President of the Soil Association Council many decades ago, was a friend and colleague of Lady Eve Balfour's. We are now the largest certifier of organic land in the UK, with just over 50%. Under our certification, and we certify right across the supply chain, including food and drink. We also certify for the Woodland Carbon Code and a whole load of other things. Just before I get into the slides, one of the things that's really important to us, and obviously I am biased, okay? The person that pays my wages is the licensee. So I am dependent on the certification for my livelihood. And I am dependent on the certification for their livelihood. I was told when I first arrived at OF&G in 2007, I am, as a member of the team, I am responsible to the livelihood of the licensee. I must always remember that's first and last. Anyway, I could go on and on. Let's not. Another button. Can you do it? It's not moving. There you go. I was asked to just help. Okay, thank you. I was asked to help just with a few slides. So this is from Defra statistics. Defra statistics must always come with a health warning. every year, the organic control bodies, so us, Soil Association Certification, et cetera, are bound by law to send Defra our data. And then Defra arrange all of that data and publish it the following May. The data is a snapshot of the previous year. So these are the 2021 release, but it's of the previous year's data. Some of the data gets a little bit difficult for Defra stats team because columns are not filled in correctly. I won't go into details. I could, if you want to, over a cup of tea later. This is from all of the data. I've got another slide, but this is all of the fruit and veg. It includes nuts, so there's a certain amount of agroforestry in there. But you can see that there's peaks and troughs. This is all of everything. I put another one in, but I don't want to detract too much of the in conversion land, because we have one set of data for land that's in conversion going through its first 2 or 3 years, and we have another set of data for everybody who's fully licensed. The peaks and troughs roughly align with economics. One of the main factors in the economics over the previous few decades has been the Rural Development Programme. So the money that the UK got from the EU through the joint programme. Everybody puts money in and everybody takes money out. So that programme was every 5 years, roughly, you would then agree another scheme and so on. So what we tended to find was that there would be certain peaks and troughs according with that. Another peak and trough is around where you see 2008, obviously we had the financial collapse, the subprime mortgage in America, the investment scandals that followed, and the supermarkets were looking at the discounters, Lidl and Aldi, as a threat. So Tesco, for instance, delisted about 30% of their organic overnight. So that drop is partly in line with that. It's not a dramatic drop as much as you'd think, because 2 years later, Tesco, analysing its own club card data, the famous Dunnhumby data, realised it was losing more through the till than it was expecting to lose by just shelving organic. Turns out, people who go into Tesco's, other supermarkets are available. When they purchase organic, they're going in there with a set of values and they will purchase other premium products. Somebody who buys organic in that shop is spending about 2.7 times more than the person standing next to them who isn't buying organic. Another quick point, and I'll go on to the next slide, the organic premium that you see in the supermarkets rarely makes it back to the organic farmer. We could discuss that later. So some more data here. This is from a combination of Kantar stuff from the Organic Trade Board and from the Soil Association. So what have we got? Yeah, 9 in 10 households bought something organic. Okay, they're not stocking up everything, but they aren't recognizing organic. Dairy is a particularly strong favourite, partly because the supermarkets sit on the price of the milk. Again, we could discuss. But the value of organic has risen and risen and risen. It's well over 2 billion, depends on which set of data you look at, but 2 billion roughly, maybe 2.5, could be nearly 3 now, because the last Soil Association data, I think it's about 6 months ago. We've seen a massive increase also as the result of the lockdown. So people are, click it again. Over a third of millennials are more likely to buy organic post-COVID. This is what they say in surveys. Yes, we have to take it with a pinch of salt, but it shows an intention. Over 2/3 of Brits surveyed would swap for organic in September, for the organic September promotional month. Over 2/3. And just over half say that organic for them means better for the environment. They recognize organic. Organic is a word they see, they understand. I'm not sure they would with if the word was no-till or regenerative or any of those terms. We do a series of papers every now and then. This one was 2007. And we say that organic is important. In fact, it's vital because it's the certification that gives the shopper confidence that what they're buying is what it says it is. We saw a big upset in the market with the horse meat scandal. Businesses that we license, Essential Trading in Bristol, for instance, big cooperative wholesaler, were really tired after a few months of that because people left the supermarkets in droves and went to independent shops instead. They needed the trust. This is the last slide. I just wanted to say this, actually, I chaired the Welsh Grain Forum, so with that hat on, I'm involved in a little exercise where we're mapping grain networks, alternative grain networks. It works really well because as we start to see that there's more people around, more people join. So for instance, Y, that's Yorkshire Grain Alliance. So Joe Fennerty at Food Circle York, Sarah Mansky at Nova Bakehouse in Leeds, Mike Stringer, who's an organic farmer down the road from them. They have started to build a community of farmers, millers, and bakers. And all the others are doing the same. CG is common grain, that's in Scotland, and so on. I wonder if the OGA membership would like to look at doing a similar thing, so that when we're selling into markets, we're also saying to each other, can you help me with this and this? I know it happens informally, but the more people see stuff, the more obvious we can make it, the better. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So OFG, if you like, and the Soil Association certification and some others represent the first generation of certification. And the point about that was self-identification, clarity in the marketplace, not just a brand, but actually clarity. So people who are interacting with you as farmers and growers are buying because they know the production system and what's happening. So it's self-identification, identification as being part of a community. And because from the beginning, we never separated detailed techniques from the principles, it also says, this is our worldview, this is our set of values. And I think it's a real problem that the standards have become detailed in that way and to some extent separated from that underlying principles. Where that goes adrift, we could see in the US, for example. In the early days, we never felt the need to say in standards that organic production is based on soil. Why would we say it? It's self-explanatory, it's just a given, isn't it? We couldn't believe, it never occurred to us that anybody would ever be so stupid as to think you can produce something called organic without soil. Yet now what do we find? And okay, allowing for the crass stupidity of America, the United States, what we find is increasingly the organic sector is bedeviled by soilless organic production. We never envisaged you could have organic production that was based in a confined feedlot. We didn't even think about it. Why the hell? You know, there's intrinsic welfare issues. There's treating animals as animals, you know. Never thought that would have to be defined. Yet in America, the real organic movement is bedeviled by people who are producing and selling stuff without soil and for livestock in confined animal units. So it's self-identification, but it's also waving a flag to the world. This is what we are. These are our principles. These are our practices. This is what we do. And we do this because this is how we're about to change. But the first generation, what we found, and I think Stephen pointed this out in terms of the grain lab, that kind of rather narrow view of identification and certification and establishing and confirming your organic credentials is probably too cumbersome for the world as it now is. And we have to find another way. Ben this morning made a big thing of buying or joining OGA to get this magazine. It's outstanding. It really is excellent, both in terms of information, but also new ideas. And tomorrow in spring, I'll produce an article in here called Group Certification, a new way to confirm your organic credentials. And the development of group certification as opposed to individual certification is in part to do with cost, but it's also, again, part to do with developing communities of growers. And the experience in Moldova, I think, is particularly interesting. So, tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes, well, first, why we are where we are in Moldova. By the way, I tend to wear a lot of hats, and I'm not wearing a Toast Organic hat now. I am president and founder of an organic growers and consumers association in Moldova. And that's the experience I'd like to present today. I come from Moldova. In 2018, we launched the first farmers market in Moldova, which is crazy for a rural and agricultural country. I mean, it's got lots of little markets, but there are no rules, and there wasn't any market where the producer could sell himself directly to a consumer, and we only allow local produce, and any organic producer can be there. So we launched it in 2018, and it became really, really successful and popular. But we didn't have any organic fruit and veg. And the market is called Echolocal, which meant organic and local products. So it became crazy because people were coming to buy organic products, and we had none. We had about 13 small vegetable and fruit producers, and only one of them was in year 2 of conversion. So yeah, we thought, we're going to talk to consumers and we're going to educate them, and they're going to trust. In fact, the slogan is cultivating trust. So, but the more we were educating the consumers, the more hard the questions were from them. How is your produce different? How can you prove? What is difference in your product? Because they were already selling at premium prices at our market, but we had nothing to show. We had nothing to prove that the producers were different, were better. So we even started developing our own standard, called it Echolocal standard, and we delved into trying to develop standards and auditing schemes, and we looked at costs, and the more we went into that, the crazier it got, the more difficult it got. And then we realized that there is a wealth of knowledge already developed in decades of developing organic standards. Why the hell are we not using that? Why are we trying to develop something in parallel, which is very hard? We didn't have resources, and then it wouldn't prove much anyway, because nobody would know about such a standard. So that was 2018, and 2019 it was even harder because the market became even more popular. The questions got even harder from consumers, because they got educated and they said, how is this organic if you don't have anything to show us? And at that point, we decided, right, we need to get these vegetable producers into organic certification. There is no other way. We are not going to develop our own out of the blue standard. So, of course, it would be expensive and difficult, and there is a very high rate of dropping out of organic conversion in Moldova, at least. People just don't know what they're doing. They have lots of incompliances and they give up. So we thought, right, we need to keep this 13, 14 producers together and help them so that they don't drop out. And this is when the group certification idea came through. So we needed a certification body who would take it, and none of them in Moldova were dealing with group certification. So we said, right, well, you get your act together. You look into regulations, you develop your own standard, because we want a contract with you guys. So out of 3 agencies, one came through and said, yes, we'll do that for you, so let's try. So they are now in their first group certification process. They're being audited by the national auditing body that are making sure the certification is done properly. And this is what I'd like to present to you shortly. It's this, so we created, we created this new project within our association. We called it Echolocal Chart, so that we don't use our normal brand, Echolocal, and it's a group of producers in organic conversion, so that it's clear to everybody it's conversion, it's not organic just yet. And that was in 2020. Until then, we were looking at producers because some of them were so small, it wouldn't make any sense for them to go into certification. So this is the group, more or less. And we went through quite an interesting process because nothing was available in the country, neither internally nor externally, how this is done. There are some indications in the new EU regulations, which we were trying to follow, but there wasn't much available. So we actually went through the process, discovering it ourselves. So initially we had 8 producers, then 3 more joined the group, then 2 of them changed their minds, they dropped out. So now we have 9 vegetable and fruit producers. They're all very small, up to 5 hectares, and they all produce and sell at the market, either vegetables, table grapes, top fruit, berries, or a mixture of these. And their common selling is the farmers market that we run, but also they sell in other places, that, like they have box schemes or, other shops. So this is one of the things that keep them together, is that they all come and sell at our market, and the market is running every Saturday and Sunday for 4 hours. So we provide them with a place to sell, not just with training and support. So following the EU rules, and this is a very, easy, superficial presentation, because there are more little rules probably, but the main rules are that the members of the group would need to be in a geographical proximity. Now, what that means depends on the group. The group decides whether, like we decided that the whole country is our geographical proximity, because it's a small country, it's the size of Wales, and they all come to the same market, so we kind of tick that box. It's got to have a common marketing plan, which means all group members sell in the same way. So in our case, it's a farmers market. They all come to that market, so it is a common marketing place. But they also have their own other channels to sell. The rule is that they all have to be small, up to 5 hectares each, and they have to have a common line of business. So, like our group is all in horticulture, it could be another group in dairy products, or it could be another group in, I don't know, flowers or meat or whatever. So it has to have a common line of business, and it's got to have a legal entity. So it's not just a woolly, group of people who can disappear at any time. It's got to have some legal rigors with it. So time-wise, as I said, in 2018, we launched the market. We met most of them at the market, and we discovered trust problems that were coming from consumers, problems that we could not explain, could not prove, although we kind of knew them, that they were really nice people with organic at their heart. We couldn't prove anything. And then we started looking for different assurance standards. And as I said, we even tried to develop our own and realized that's too much of a task. In 2020, we formed the group, we found the appropriate certification body, and we developed the internal standards, the internal manuals that every group member has to follow. In 2021, on 1st of January, they entered all-in conversion, and they've been trained. The training started actually last year in 2020, and we've just finished our, the first round of inspections. And so this will be going on this year, next year. There's going to be continuous self-support and training. And then in 2023, hopefully they will all reach the certification standard and will have their certificates, by which time we may decide to dismantle the group and let them continue on their own, because we feel that this conversion period is the most difficult one, when most growers drop out. They just can't cope with the loneliness, with isolation, with inspections, with paperwork, with bureaucracy, and this is critical that we give them this support. So the next slides are really just a few pictures so that you get an idea. The self-support and learning from each other seems to be the main thrust, the main force that keeps this group together. It's not the costs, it's not the bureaucracy, it's not the pricing, it's not the marketplace. It's the isolation and the lack of knowledge that we are covering from within. So they really learn a lot from each other. And so every 2 months or 3 months or so, they visit each other, like we did in TOG, in terms of organic growers. And every time there's a topic, so there is a practical activity. There is no budget involved, nothing. It's just really self-organized. And this seems to be the best way to keep them up on their toes with the rules, with the inspections, with the regulations. And yeah, they're learning a lot. That's totally digging holes with them. So yeah, we're kind of visiting each other's, they are. And sometimes we organize a bus so that people can get there in time. So the main advantages, as they see it, because we keep, we ask them why they are in the group, what they see it as an advantage is, of course, they have a reduced cost for inspections, because the certification body, they split the cost amongst all of them. So being 10 initially, the cost was 10% of what they would pay normally. And also there's reduced time with inspections, at least in the future, because the inspections are not done to all members. They will pick a number of group members that they will inspect. Now this year, because it's been the first time for them and for the group, all of them have been visited by the certification body. And the certification officers were accompanied by their own inspectors to make sure this is done properly. So it is a proper process in place, but in the future, they should get fewer inspections, so not every year. The peer support and problem solving, as I said, it's probably one of the main advantages they wouldn't get if they were alone. They already joined the brand, which is Echolocal Chart, so people know this brand. They don't have to build their own brands for their products. And they do have a competitive advantage on markets because, and it's not really about the price. So when two producers sell the same product with the same price, they have this advantage of being in conversion, showing that through the contract and you know, answering the difficult questions from the consumers. The difficulties with that is that at least as regulations say, they need to be under a legal entity. Now, in Moldova, like in England, there is this unincorporated membership association. There's a perfectly legal form that people can get together and run. In Moldova, we don't have that. So it has to be either a limited liability company or an NGO. So in our case, the association took the group under our wing. So we didn't have to create a new company, but creating a new company can be quite a difficult task. And then everything, we went digital because it will be easier to follow what everybody is doing, because the risk is if someone is not, you know, is breaking the law, then the whole group will suffer. So they've had to learn how to run electronic journals entries on their phones, although we trained them, we provided all that. And then difficulties with seeds, which is a problem for everybody, I suppose. Not having organic seeds. Well, next year it should be easy because they'll be able to save some of their own seeds, but this year has been quite difficult. The factors that I also put in the article is that at least being an NGO, you can you know, apply for some grants. So a group like that could get grant money to support the group by, you know, paying a manager or for other needs. It needs an internal manager and it needs an internal inspector, which is also dictated by the rules. And it could be voluntarily done by some of the members, but the inspector has to be from outside. But without that, the group would not probably be able to cope with the outside inspections. You know, the group itself has to be a team. People need to know each other. They need to trust each other, and they need to be honest to each other, because the success of every member then transfers into the success of the group and the other way around. And at the beginning, they were really, really worried that, oh my God, why am I getting to this? Because someone is going to break the rules and I'm going to be suffering. And you could see that. But in time, with meetings and visits and talkings and opening, they now trust each other completely. There is continuous training, which needs to be organized. And then it has to be this strong drive from within that we want this to succeed. We need that. And they know why they need that. Because I don't know, I haven't seen it in this country, but in Moldova at the markets, people, well, buyers, shoppers come with these gadgets, which is like measuring nitrates. It's crazy. It's complete mimicking gadgets, but they do it in strawberries, in watermelons, in cantaloupe melons, and they get these crazy values of nitrates and big scandals. And these guys, they don't apply anything. They don't understand why they are showing. And at least having a contract and showing people that, look, I am in conversion. I am doing what has to. I'm not spraying. I'm not applying. It's still a difficult conversation, but at least it's helping to be in a professional process of certifying what you are doing. And this is why I think, and we think, that certification matters and is important to deliver that trust that consumers want. And the more consumers are educated and the closer they are to you, the more questions they'll have for you. So this is why certification is hard, but it helps build that trust and deliver that trust. Thank you very much. That was it.
So we will have plenty of time for discussion. What we wanted to do is to put forward the lie of the land, really, so where things are. Group certification has been talked about a long time. Legally, in terms of the EU regulation, it wasn't possible. The new EU regulation specifically allows or introduces the possibility of group certification. But it has to be linked to a registered certification body. I'm not sure post-Brexit what will be the situation in the UK. I don't know whether you know. Do you think group certification will be allowed in the UK?
The regulation is about to be discussed. So Defra have said we are operating now, instead of to the EU regulation, to the retained regulation, which was the one that we were using last year, but this year's just got the word retained in front of it. Looking ahead, I think we're looking at a sort of 2 or 3 year thing of where we have discussions with all the bodies and with the government, and they want to talk to commercial stakeholders about what we do. One of the things that we need to take into account is drives like this, which I think are really good, and I liked the way that that was working. The other is that we need to be able to trade cross-border. So is it going to be recognised in another country, within the UK or beyond? So those are the discussions.
So the other aspect of this is a thing that internationally has been called participatory guarantee schemes. I call participatory certification. And in the autumn magazine, I did an article about participatory certification with lots of references to the iPhone page on participatory guarantee schemes. And if you want to know more about the details and where participatory certification schemes exist, then check out the iPhone website. And it's instructive. I always assumed that PGS, or participatory certification schemes, were to be found in the global south or the majority countries. That it wasn't a thing in the so-called developed world. When I actually looked at the case studies in iFilm, I found actually that's not true. And these participatory certification schemes are found in numerous places in the developed world, quite a few in the United States, quite a few in different European countries, where the growers are not actually concerned with export. And there's no question, I mean, Stephen's just raised that point. These kinds of schemes are very difficult as far as export on an open market's concerned. However, if you export or trade within a closed system, that's a different ballgame. Participatory certification, as opposed to group certification, is something that is grassroots based. It's interactive between farmers and consumers. It builds the capacity for the farmer and the citizen in terms of knowledge, exchange and empowerment. It supports and promotes short supply chains and local markets. And it does so at a cost that's proportionate to the finances of small scale growers. I would propose that in the UK, it's built on published organic principles and standards, but adapted to grower conditions and concerns. And at the core of this relationship is the active engagement, similar to the one that Tamara's just outlined, of regionally based peer groups of growers, but in partnership with their customers, whether we call them consumers or a citizen community. Better the latter, because ultimately when we talk about community supported agriculture, we're asking consumers to behave as citizens in support of growers. So participatory certification seems to me to be something that we need to consider in the UK, especially because we have really new developments with new growers coming in. I have. See, just I got used to it. The new dynamic change, which is great, of new people coming in, the development of community gardens, the development of community supported agriculture schemes, small scale growers, local markets. Thankfully, it's a different world. But what that different world means is we're faced with new structures, and we're faced with differences in terminology. The organic movement or the organic sector has a lot of criticism about it because of a thing called corporate organic, where organic really has become part of the mainstream corporate world. But the same thing is happening with agroecology. There's a number of papers now talking about corporate agroecology. Companies are selling their products on the basis of their agroecological. One of the researchers who works in Coventry describes this in a paper as junk agroecology. Well, because agroecology doesn't have the same kind of detail, the same set of standards, the same transparency in terms of descriptions of growing systems, agroecology is, as it stands at the moment, is problematic in terms of confusion. Similarly, the term regenerative. Regenerative is a real buzzword. But if you look closely at what regenerative agriculture is in the United States and in this country, farmers who self-identify as regenerative have not given up soluble fertilizers. They still use pesticides, they still use herbicides, and they still use fungicides. The leading regenerative farmer in the UK, John Cherry, describes it as a direction of travel. Well, they don't define where they're traveling to, other than more efficient use of environmentally damaging inputs. So when we, in this alternative, this organic community, begin mixing terminologies and agronomic descriptions and so on, we not only confuse ourselves, but we confuse citizens and customers. I see participatory certification of a way of extending what I call the organic umbrella to a new range of groups that are coming in, exchanging knowledge and information about organic principles, holistic principles for food and farming, and also agronomic techniques. I've described this, we have the development of a fracturing organic grower community. There are a number of legitimate views and discussions to be had about levels of some kind of inputs, the use of green waste materials for weed control, for example. There's a number of topics like that the grower community under the current certification type model is not really addressing. And they're not really addressing it with its customers. And we need to do that. So there is this emerging new dynamic around claims, which inevitably become marketing claims, and also become claims in terms of, Tamara mentioned it, in terms of grants and supports. Especially in a world where we're supposedly going to be paid for delivery of public goods, public money for public goods. How are we defining the public goods? It's a mess at the moment. The proposals are a mess. So they started with outcomes. We can measure public goods by outcomes. Actually, you can't really. It's very, very difficult. So you end up with proxy measurements like soil organic carbon, which is very, very poor proxy measurement. Doesn't really say very much. Certainly does not take into account the variation, the variability of different production systems. So we come back to a description of the system. And if we go down the line of that description of the system just on agronomy, on technology, we're fucked, basically. because we miss totally where we think we are in the world and what we think our legacy is to the development of the world. So we have to link those two together. And I think participatory certification can help do that. It can forge new relationships within the grower community and new relationships within short supply chains, within local markets, within local economies. It can be a thing of its own, or it can be a stepping stone, a transition through group certification to overall certification. Depends on where you want to go in the end. I think there's no substitute really for full-scale certification if you're dealing in a mainstream market with export products in a kind of commodity market. The way you're talking about the grain things that Stephen, local grain supply chains that Stephen outlined, or supply chains that many growers are involved with, then participatory certification is a great way forward. And it means that growers have to do properly what they claim they do. All growers I talk to who do local, oh, our customers know what we're doing. We inform them, you know, we disseminate information. We inform, we've got this good relationship. It's like teenage sex. Everybody says they're doing it, and the ones who, everyone claims they're doing it, but hardly anyone is, and the ones who are doing it are not doing it properly. There is nobody who is doing this kind of information, or very, very few who's doing this kind of information and exchanges with their customers properly. I think group participatory certification gives an opportunity for that. So we have, I think, finished our presentations. We have plenty of time for discussion. I'm going to be seriously technology challenged here because I've got absolutely no clue how we're going to feed in any questions from the online people. And I hope somebody is going to tell me how to do that in a minute. But in the meantime, over to you. Any comments, questions, clarification, or whatever? We've taken up a lot of time preaching at you. So, okay, you were the first.
I think we've been briefed that oh yes, okay, there's a microphone then. No need for us to repeat the question.
Okay. Hi there, yeah, I'm Andy, I'm a veg grower. I train organic, specifically, apprentices, trainees. The first session we do of the year, the theory session, I used to just do organic standards, organic principles. We go through them. This year is the first year it felt appropriate the first session changed, and it was the definition of agroecology, regenerative, and organic. And I asked the new entrants what organic is. They just say no chemicals.
Yeah,
that's it. They have no idea of the standards. And as soon as you go through the standards, they're blown away at the depth. And I think there's a huge disconnect with young entrants. They just have no idea of the detail and the years of work that have developed those standards. So I also think the organic umbrella comment, there's a huge opportunity right now. I've never seen so many young people coming into some form of sustainable horticulture. They're all looking what form of sustainable horticulture. Agroecology, regenerative, they own 80% of the social media space. And organic doesn't seem to, my guys only seem to get into organic because they happen to have ended up on an organic farm. And I see there's a huge opportunity right now with new entrants. A lot of them come in, they do self-taught courses online, and they kind of skip the education and start up their own business straight away. They then realize they're massively short on knowledge, and you can only access so much online. So I see a huge opportunity here to close the gap, which is mentoring, training through participatory or joint certification, and there being a key opportunity here to get the detail of the standards through, very similar to the Moldova sort of process where the sharing of knowledge was a key part of that group certification. I think now is possibly a really key moment for organic. And we've got to grasp it now, or possibly lose this huge new influx of growers. who I think will farm in the right way, but will maybe not get the real depth of knowledge that comes from the standards. No one realizes that everything that comes through the farm gate has to be, tip-top sustainable credentials. No one knows that, none of them. So the standards, the knowledge about standards, no one realizes that, apart from us who are already within the movement. And we've got to get that information out. Maybe, and it's very hard, it's a big fat tome, standards. Maybe a very reduced, detailed bullet point version might be a good way of tempting people into the deeper kind of organic philosophy. But yeah, I see it as a time of opportunity, but I see group certification being absolutely key to the mentoring and education and getting people on board.
Thanks, Andy. Absolutely. Completely agree.
Can I just respond to that? Just quickly. I agree completely with everything you just said. One of my jobs at OF&G is pushing the media messages out. It's really hard. We've done case studies, they're online. Been to farms, filmed stuff, just, 2-minute thing out of a 12-minute section. We did a film on how you get certified, again, just a few minutes. We're pushing them out all the time. One of the issues that we're up against is that the current system has de-skilled all growers, or growers everywhere, should I say. So regenerative is being banded around like it's, I don't know, rocking horse shit. I mean, I'm now regenerative. One of the things that farmers are up against is a lack of trusted knowledge source that isn't wedded to some corporate entity. One of the issues we're up against is a lack of resource. Where will we fund this training, etc.? Maybe we can all put a few quid in together. But at the moment, OF&G, for instance, we're a community interest company. Any profits that the company makes out of the licensing go into things like my wages, because I don't do the licensing. Nobody's going around in a big car, or if they are, I'd like to know about it. So it's where we get that funding, how we get that resource, and I think we're just going to have to put our heads together on that one, and it's not going to. There is a magic money tree, but I think you have to be a member of a certain political party to get access to it. Well, and we can share that responsibility.
Yeah, the previous attempts for outside organisations and Land Workers Alliance, I think is struggling a bit now. Always the cost of the wage to manage the training makes the cost of the training to the trainee or apprentice disproportionate. So I actually think the responsibility probably lies on growers themselves and farmers themselves. And I would just say that the best staff you can have are staff with a thirst for knowledge, who've turned up for a wage, but also to learn. And I find them far superior to staff that just want cash. So I think it's actually on us as producers to step up to the mark on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite absolutely. We just, it's worth reminding you all that the organic growing community started without any money. It's just the efforts of individual growers. Now, because of this flight, I'm having a hard time seeing. Helen, did you have your hand up first? No, you didn't. No, it was Rebecca, yeah?
Yes.
And then Richard behind you. Is it Richard? Okay, so you first, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca Lawton, Land Workers Alliance, horticulture campaign. I just wanted to respond by saying I'm really grateful that you've raised this topic and created this space for discussing it. And I wholeheartedly agree, first, that organic matters, and secondly, that we need to keep unity in this movement. I just wanted to give a couple of responses about why agroecology is something that Land Workers Alliance have sort of adopted, and it absolutely doesn't mean that Land Workers Alliance is rejecting organic. It's seen as really, really important, but I think it's emerged very much from two things really. There's the issue of cost of certification, and I think that Tamara's proposal and your proposal about participatory certification, this is so welcome. I've lost track of the times over 25 years that group certification has been talked about and there have been initiatives and it never seems to come to anything. But actually the participatory certification to me represents what agroecology is trying to bring into organics, which was lacking in the corporate organics. And I think this is the other reason why agroecology has really inspired a lot of people, because it's been seen as a response to the corporatization of organics, and particularly focusing on supermarket sales, marketing it to a sort of niche luxury market. I think that's got a lot better in the last decade, but in the early 2000s, it just felt that organic was being marketed as a lifestyle thing for people who are wealthy. And organic and agroecology is very much, from the Landworkers Alliance and the La Via Campesina definition of it, within food sovereignty, is seen as incorporating and extending more social aspects such as food justice, fair pay to workers, as well as all the organic principles. Now, I completely agree that there's a risk of people it not having a legal definition and turning it into a corporate sort of saying that gene editing can be part of it. And that's absolutely not what we're wanting it to be. But I think that this moment really can bring the movements together, and what real agroecology is alongside real organics. It needs to be about localizing the markets, about creating these regional group certification or participatory certification schemes. And that's really what the roots of agroecology are as well. And from Landworkers Alliance perspective, I've been really, really keen to work with you on this. It's absolutely what the horticulture campaign is wanting to do. And I think there's a lot of mileage for working together. So thank you for bringing it up.
That's great to know. I noticed Mark, but Richard first. And then it was all that stuff coming in, or?
Yeah, I think that Ben is sorting it out.
Oh, okay. All right. So Richard first, then Mark, and then we'll do the.
Hello. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to respond to you just briefly. There are within the organic standards. The organic standards do cover social justice and those aspects. It's not just agronomy.
Richard, I can't hear. Could you hold the mic a bit further away?
Further away from me?
Yeah.
All right. My arms aren't very long. I don't know. Is that far enough away?
That's fine.
Okay. Do I have to shout? No, I don't know. No, I just wanted to say that all the small growers, well, organic matters, right? When I started, actually the first thing I did was apply for a certification. You might think I'm completely mad. I couldn't afford it, but I thought it's the most important thing. So that's the first thing I did. And I think all the small growers, I don't know whether they're here or listening, but they have to realize that they're piggybacking on all the work of the organic movement. I've been to so many markets where I meet a trader and he says, oh, it's organic, he says, or she says, it's just not certified. And in saying that, you're saying, you're piggybacking on all the work that's gone before you. And I think that's an important thing. And when you're selling, you're relying on the organic market, like whether you like it or not. That's the market, the organic. And so hopefully all the new growers will realize that when they come to sell their produce, that they need to be organic. That saying that you're local isn't going to be enough, say, for instance. I think that's important. The other thing I wanted to say was, I think the group certification sounds like a great idea, but I don't know how much. I think my first certification bill was maybe £300 or £400 per year. Now, that might be controversial, but that doesn't sound like a lot of money to me, actually, to keep the certification bodies going and to keep the organic going. It didn't sound like a lot. I've said this many times before, but if your business can't afford £300 or £400 a year, then you might need to reconsider what you're doing. It's a bit, I'll say that's controversial maybe, but I think it's important. I had some other things to say, but I can't remember what they are. So yeah.
No, it's a very good point, and there are plenty of organic growers who who see certification as absolutely critical to developing the movement and the sector and make that contribution. Mark, you wanted to say something, and then we'll go on to this.
Hello, I'm Mark Measures, organic advisor and farmer. I was going to say something about why organic does matter and why the principles are so important to me, and actually much more important than certification. And the principles of health, ecology, fairness and care, as espoused by IFOAM, are always, for me, a challenge and a motivation to do our practical farming better. And that continues throughout, and I think is absolutely crucial. And we don't just see it as some sort of a benchmark. It actually is an aspiration to function and perform better. I mean, I've lived with standards in my back pocket for the best part of 40 years, and they're a necessary part, but actually they are only a part of trying to aspire to these principles. That's what I was going to say, but what actually I'm really sort of wound up about saying is these points that have been made about agroecology and the supposed thinking that organic sort of fits in there somewhere, and that we can redefine agroecology to encompass all of the wider ambitions of organic farming. And actually, this is a nonsense, I think. I think that every time that we fail to mention organic, we are actually undermining the whole organic movement and the principles and the practices and the development of consumer recognition that is actually our lifeblood. And I think this is a really important issue which we need to be tackling properly if we're going to work as a community here.
Thank you, Mark. There's a few things that from online people, and could I, for anyone who's online and had previously put a question down, we didn't quite catch it. So if you could repeat your question online, then hopefully we can pick them up. And a request from a request from people online is that we should, and I apologize, make sure people give their names when they say anything, because as someone said, how do we know? We don't know everybody here, but there were some good comments from responses to Andy and good comments about Rebecca's point. So, and the other person who spoke was Richard Plowright, Plowright Organics, for the benefit of there. So any more questions online, that would be great. So anything else here? Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Paul. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you say your name again?
My name's Paul. I'm the manager at Growing Well in South Cumbria. We are Soil Association certified organic. It's interesting that the word that comes up a lot in these discussions is trust. Steve Eves talked about it as a kind of trust of the knowledge base, and some mistrust maybe in the knowledge base, maybe particularly to young people, I don't know, and new entrants. And Tamara, you've talked about kind of trust with consumers, or these people that we hope would support us in our endeavors to grow. Maybe less talked about so far is trust within growers. And I know for me why organic matters, one of the reasons I thought was that there was an extension of that is a relationship with others that are in this activity. And I knew that if organic mattered to them, I can understand that. And why does certification matter? It matters because that holds us all accountable as growers. And I wonder if there's something in that that's missing. It sounds like already, things are quite fractured as they are, and we're trying to get an understanding of why these other concepts emerge. And so when I discuss certification and why I think it's important with other growers, or we have training sessions, or with our volunteers, that's one of the reasons I point to. I don't go straight necessarily to the market or to the consumer, but more of I'm part of a broader group of growers that have this common definition that's transparent and open and we can all relate to. And I think that's where potentially agroecology and regenerative do fall down. There are concepts within there that are great, but I don't know if it's taken to the ends that organic certification is. Whether that requires certification, I'm not sure, if you need to be agroecologically certified. But I think it's an important part is trust within the growers themselves that when I meet you, I know kind of by default, this is a standard you're growing to, and we can immediately have that connection. I think that's mostly it. So.
Okay, do you want to respond or to anything so far?
Yes, yes, if I may. Thank you for your comments. I'd like to respond first to Andy's comments about the standards. And I agree, being not very long experienced in organic farming, that the standards are very complex and they can be overwhelming to a new entrant or to someone who is very busy. And luckily, they can be split into sectors, and then you don't have to absorb all of them. You just focus on the part of the standards that relate to your business. And this is how we are dealing with that in this group. We are teaching the standards as we go, and we are almost serving them in portions so that they can be understood and followed. Of course, you start with the most important things which they need to know before they make mistakes. But in this respect, I think a service, a mentoring or advisory service that would be permanent in this country or in any country for new entrants, for those who are in conversion, that would also be available to explain the standards would be absolutely necessary. A little bit of a story about agroecology. In Moldova, organic farming is actually, in Romanian, it's agricultura ecologică by law. We don't use the word organic, we use the word ecological. So, and agroecology is agroecologia. So you can imagine the confusion it creates between agricultura ecologică and agroecologia. So it's even more confusing than here. But my advice would be, after we tried to develop an internal standard which would be almost organic but not quite organic, because and it's an immense task, and then you realize a lot of work has been done. Why the hell are we trying to do that again? So that would be the advice to any other schemes not trying to develop new standards. And to talk about the cost of certification, and I am going to be now wearing the Tolhurst Organic hat. What it costs, and we are a very small grower. I mean, we are a minute company in terms of how much we farm at Tolhurst Organic and how much we, turn over. But the cost of certification to us is about half a week sales. So to any new entrant, you put that into your business plan, if you like. You have to know and build that into, like you put any other costs, wages or whatever. So it can't really be a factor that would stop you from certification, just the cost. Once you build it into your business plan and you know how much it's going to be and how this is going to pay off, then it shouldn't be a problem. And the last thing about certification or being certified or not at Tolhurst Organic, we could easily give up on that, because people that buy, they would buy anyway, because they know us, trust us, I don't know, like the product are very local. But we would lose this network, this medium where we've been for so many years, we would lose the relationship with certification bodies. And I think the trust would erode in time. Therefore, at this stage, we are certified not for the initial reasons probably, but we are being loyal to organic standards. And I think this is a really, really strong force for us as a business to stay in business and to be here and to be wherever we'll be in the future. So I think certification does matter.
So there's quite a few things coming in from online, which I should just pass on. Paulina Johnson from Sweden talked about, we're very much discussing the same questions in Sweden. The supermarkets are now marketing local and agroecology and regenerative instead of organic. So we have to show, to echo tomorrow's point, we have to show that organic matters in big capital letters. Antonia Inson, I think, from Scotland, points out that the other reason why certification matters is that it gives means for government policy. Government policy in Scotland, she says, has recognised the value of organic system to managing climate change or mitigating climate change and biodiversity. The Scottish government has committed to doubling organic land in the next few years via a national organic action plan, as have other European countries, and increasing organic food in public procurement. She says none of this would be happening without certification. She's a member of the Myrside Organics and Scottish Organic Stakeholder Groups. There was a question which I certainly we can answer up here, but also other people. It's from Amy Child, who's an apprentice from Ready Lane Market Garden. She said she joined the organic scene via a Kickstarter job fair. I went to my first day of work at a market garden with only the knowledge I had, which compared to now wasn't much. And I didn't really have a green thumb. But with the right knowledge and care, anyone can become a successful grower. Knowledge about growing organic produce is a golden nugget that needs to be spread. So her question, which please feel free, anyone, how are we to get the new generation involved or give them access to this knowledge, this golden nugget, not just through membership, magazine, or word of mouth? And someone else, Rob Alderton, in response to that, said, okay, we could have regular articles in the Organic Grower magazine introducing different aspects of organic standards. But has anybody got any kind of idea about information beyond, just through Organic Grower magazine, getting information to young entrants, young growers? Okay.
This is going to sound super petty, all right? This is going to sound really petty, but I often wonder if J.M. Fortier or any of these other kind of charismatic personalities had not talked about biointensive or come up with a new keyword and just said organic, if we would have this issue as much. So do we need to just clone a J.M. Fortier or Richard Perkins or whoever, and they become the organic superstar and not the regenerative or agricultural X, Y, or Z superstar? I think there is something in that. It is, I think, terribly petty and unfortunate, but it is a powerful medium and a tool that has happened, and why I imagine in the point earlier, if you were to ask these new entrants why they got interest, what they heard, they saw or Instagram or somebody else, and then they just started following that person, and they do regenerative, so why not? So I think there's something in that. How we go about it, I don't know, but I just think, I wonder if we'd be in the same position if 10 years ago that was the starting point and it wasn't, I do regenerative or I do biointensive, or I do something else. I actually do an organic and I'm certified, and here's why.
Okay, I mean, there was pre-COVID, I mean, and historically there's been visits and demonstrations and demonstration farms and growers and an active visitor and grower section sort of activity, but that takes a lot to put on, and the numbers seem to dwindle as well. But I think there's maybe we have to find some way of resurrecting that kind of activity. Could Could we just pass it over here? 'Cause I think you had your hand up, didn't you? Yeah, first, and then.
I'm Nanda from Y Organic near the Forest of Dean, a market garden. I don't quite know how to go about it, but what I'd really like to see is a training college, residential one in the UK, and that's organic and that trains either horticulture, maybe farming too. Because I've seen it in Holland, they have a biodynamic college there, and I worked in Holland for a bit on a few farms, and I met a lot of the apprentices, and they do a 4-year training, and 2 of those years they all live together, and it just sounds totally amazing. They have a practice garden where they can mess it up a bit, and not, waste anyone's money or whatever. And I don't know, I think there isn't anything really in the UK for training, and I don't, Oh, okay.
Just quickly on, I think you're right, we need a dedicated college. What we have got is the SRUC in Scotland have an organic course. It's fairly new, but it's been running for a little while. It's very good. Lou Ralph runs that, and people can get details from me whenever. We sponsor a course at Harper Adams University. We weren't allowed to use the O word, so with them we built an agroecology course. And hoping that our involvement, all we do is sponsor one scholarship, that will help. But also we've just launched and run the first BASIS Foundation Award in organic. So that's getting a relationship with advisors. And I think one of the things that's coming clear is the relationship between the growers and your markets. Well, obviously there needs to be a relationship between you and the certifiers. There needs to be a relationship between all of the educators as well. And it's about relationships. So we need to get better relationships with education.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Rebecca, in a second. Helen, first of all. Sorry, Helen, keep going.
So it was just a really quick one to say there is also a national network of farm starts, which I think all of us are organic who do that, and also will be setting up kindling farms soon that will have hopefully in the future residential that will be committed to organic. But I totally agree. I think it would be really exciting.
So I'm just getting wrist slapped by not getting you to say who you are and where you're from. I know, but the others don't.
Helen from Kindling Trust and Kindling Farm here in Manchester.
Okay, and then to Rebecca Lawton of Land Workers Alliance.
Thank you. Yes, it's me again. I just wanted to respond to what Tamara was saying about scale and how affordable organic certification costs are. Because actually, compared to a lot of Land Workers Alliance members, Tolhurst Organic is quite big. And so, scale does really matter. And when you're just starting up, and in my first year or two, my turnover was about 1,500. I wasn't earning a living from it. But if I'd spent half of that on certification fees, I'd have really got not very much. And I am absolutely committed to organic certification. And I think these group models, and for example, the person I work for now his certification is under an existing farm. So I think there are ways to manage it. And I think we need to be doing this and putting it forward. And the other thing I just wanted to say is, time and again, I hear people saying, well, why should it be organic people who have to pay to prove they're organic? It should be the chemical farmers who are paying. Now, as I see it, actually, that's just a really unrealistic proposition because there's no incentive to be dishonest about growing with chemicals. You wouldn't want to sort of advertise on your product, this is grown with chemicals that are poisons and so on and so forth. So the reason for having to have inspections is to protect organic against people making false claims. And I totally understand that. But one thing that within our environmental land management test and trial, we're actually proposing is that Defra pay for certification costs as well as leaf mark, so that growers have those costs and some of the admin time covered. which would actually massively bring in a lot more people and make it accessible for them. And I think certainly with the people, we've had 33 people that we've tested our ideas on. They've been really enthusiastic about that as bringing organic in to the whole ELM system. So I'll be talking about that later. But yes,
Okay.
I'm absolutely in favour of organic certification.
Okay, there's a couple of points on the chat that I should cover in the last 4 minutes. But before I do, just briefly, Stephen, do you want to say anything that you think we should urgently raise or pressing matter?
No, but our friend here, sorry, I didn't catch your name because I'm a bit out of hearing, I think had a further point. I'd sooner you had your further point. If you, I thought you said you had a further point, and I'm just curious. Are you sure?
Okay. Tomorrow?
Well, I was going to say, so go ahead.
Well, actually, people have been giving you a new job here. Makes the point that there are plenty of people out there who are good trainers and could spread information. Tomorrow would be a great start. Let's get some funding for it. It's quite right. So several people actually have made the point that, you know, we can do things for ourselves. We could look at reviving farm visits and grower exchanges. That we could certainly, even as a start, maybe something fulfill, cover some of these aspects in the organic grower magazine. Natasha Suarez, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Better Food Traders, points out, makes the point that she believes organic certification bodies ought to be making more of the story of organic standards and the deeper meaning of organic as exemplified in the iPhone Organic 3.0 thing. I think actually what's in there is great. I think the name Organic 3.0 is terrible, but anyway, it's like a computer bloody program, which certainly we're not on. But anyway, the point is right. And then there's the interesting thing, which I think is where we need to finish, or I'd like to finish, which is, I mentioned earlier in the discussion that there are plenty of new developments in terms of techniques, technologies, and so on. Standards as we envisaged them in the beginning was never meant to be static. And it was always a problem, which we figured we could handle when standards, to remind you all, standards were developed by the organic sector, mainly by growers, farmers and growers. The certification bodies became a vehicle, but the actual technical stuff, the standards, was developed in a real partnership by some research organizations, including my own, some advisors, Mark Measures, for example, some researchers, other researchers. Garden Organic was involved in those days, called Henry Doubleday Research Association, as well as certification bodies. We always had the view that organic would develop. We were conscious that in lots of areas, we really did not know the answers. We did not know how to implement the principles in practice. And some of the things you look at, so for example, organic poultry production, is way, a long way from what the principles should be. We never really managed to, the market moved faster than we could in developing those kind of principled practices. Now there are new things coming up. And Daniel Fox makes the point that one, he thinks it's a great discussion, which is good. He points out that they're new to organic. They're very small scale growers. They've been at it for 2 years and they're not certified. And he wanted to explain why they're not certified in the interests of mutual understanding. And he said, we constantly review whether it would be worth it to us and are interested in finding out more about group or participatory certification methods. If, he says, they were to go organic, it would be an important issue. They benefit in terms of trust and integrity, but they're really small and they can build trust by talking to their customers directly and personally. We are really concerned that if we were certified organic, we would have to truck in very expensive manure and compost from a long way away, seriously raising our CO2 emissions. Can the panel comment on that sort of discussed decision? There are several trade-offs like this we have to consider. No, the panel can't, I'm afraid, because we're 1 minute over. And I'm going to exercise my dictatorial power of answering on your behalf, which is I cannot see why on earth anybody believes that organic systems rely on the importation of outside manure inputs or green waste compost. This is actually a very conventional approach to agriculture. It's input substitution. Organic is about system management. It's about the managing of internal biological processes. I've seen Daniel's comments on, there's a very good Facebook forum, it's called Organic Market Gardeners, if some of you look at it. There's raised some very interesting questions there, and Tolly does a brilliant job in answering a lot of the technical questions that come up there. What it shows is two things. One is the great thing, which is huge enthusiasm from new entrants, massive enthusiasm, and giving an energy that has been much needed by the organic sector. So much energy and so much commitment, we might actually be able to start talking about the organic movement again, as opposed to the organic sector. And there is a big difference, which I don't have time to go into. But there is a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of new entrants are not really getting the whole idea about managing internal resources and closed systems. Existing growers have got a responsibility to get that across, to teach, to tell that story. Certification bodies are not really doing a very, very good job, not doing a good job in explaining that kind of thing. To some extent, they are doing a good job, but overall, it's something that has kind of fallen by the wayside a bit. This organization, working hopefully with Land Workers Alliance, I think have a responsibility to ensure that these new entrants get the concepts, get the principles, and understand where the practices flow from that. Because the people who get it wrong and are making input substitution, in other words, organic material being substituted for chemical material, are not going to stay in business. And even if they do stay in business, they're not going to make any contribution to what I think the core contribution of organic is. I used to say to people, organic, we're not in the market business. We're not in the certification business. We're in the changing the world business. And that contribution we really have to make. And we all have a responsibility to do that. So thank you for fulfilling your responsibility by turning up today and sitting through an hour and a half of this. Thank you, you two. It's been excellent. It's been great. And thank you for your participation. It's wonderful. Thanks for, and to everyone online. Thank you.
Sharing.